the senses of the existence of the neshama, you have what people call the sixth sense. And that sixth sense comes in many ways. That many times we ourselves, either we have a hard time believing it, or we get used to it and we let go. But the fact is that there's the sense that the neshama has in its subconscious that people feel things and consciously they cannot explain them because there is no reason that they're consciously aware of that they should feel whatever it is that they're feeling. But it's a reality that people feel. And the Chachamim tell us that those feelings are very real. It's the neshama that feels it. I mean, the Gemara calls it mazalai hu chazik. The mazal of the person sees it. That means the neshama of the person sees things. And the person is not conscious of what the person is seeing, and the emotions are there. The emotions are there. There are at times emotions of joy that you wake up and you're very happy. Yeah? Maybe it doesn't happen too often. But certainly, yeah, there are times that there are emotions of sadness that take over a person. These are not to be taken for granted. These are clear indications that the neshama is in touch with realities that you don't know. And even at our age, where communication is the fastest that it was ever, yeah? It's still that neshama communicates with the world much faster than any other system of communication that we have. And the neshama will feel things. The neshama will be very attuned to what's happening in the world and its own world and the world around it, and be able to sense something different, something that is inexplainable. And we take that seriously. We know that that's a reality. It's not a fantasy. It's not a wishful type of thinking that the person may have. It's something is cooking that brings about those feelings, and whether we'll ever know what they are, or many times we will know, it happens. In certain circumstances, they happen often. You know, there are many times that you will think of a person and the person shows up. Yeah, I'm sure it happens to all of us. You know, it happens to us, and it's very easy to happen because we have the regular people, and you say this person did the right, and the person walks in. Okay, so right, we're tested on a regular basis, but it's, really beyond that. The truth is that there is a sense that you feel already, the neshama feels already the person coming. And all of a sudden the person comes to your mind, and the person shows up. Yeah, it's clearly that the neshama saw it. Yeah. So that could be also something that the person has a feeling to something that will happen in the future. That means that the neshama, because the neshama has the power to see much further ahead of us. The neshama can see things that are not going to happen today. They're going to happen in the future. As men, when we find, if a person were conscious of every thought and every emotion that comes to the mind, you would see a different world. And the fact is that this is what we learn. So our Torah tells us you'd better be conscious of that. Nothing happens just, like that. The neshama is in tune, and the neshama is seeing things. So a thought that comes to your mind or an emotion that comes to you, you don't disregard it. You don't say, what? Dreams, it's a whole different chapter. We're not there yet. For sure, the dreams is one of the ways of the neshama communicating. But that will have another summer, when people are more of it. So the idea is that everything that we feel is real. It's real. Nothing is something silly, something out of a fantasy. You understand? Feelings and thoughts that come to the person's mind have a reality. Whether we will ever find out what that reality is or not, it's unimportant. What's important is that right now I'm feeling something, and I know. If a person would be conscious of all these feelings and all these thoughts, so his life would be different. So we tend to disregard everything that happens around us. But the neshama sees something right now. Right? Where people have woken up in the middle of the night with a certain feeling, and something happens. Yeah, it's normal. It's normal. When we hear a story, it's mind-boggling, but it's very normal. The neshama is going around and feeling, and the people will report that they woke up and they thought that somebody was in the house. And you know what? There was somebody in the house. The neshama saw it and related it to a level of consciousness in the person, and like that, there are many other things that occur through life. So we have to understand that that's part of the power of neshama. The same thing happens with the deja vu. Yeah? There's no question that everybody experiences in life circumstances where you all of a sudden you realize, I was there. This happened before. This is so real in something that happened before. And you think, okay, yes, no, maybe, it's not that. It's clearly the neshama feeling, so the people that were strong, some people have very strong sensitivities and they're able to capture all these emotions that were going. Eov, for example, Eov explained it. He said it. Ki pahat pahati, vayetayani. I had a fear, and it came about. That means what was the troubles that were coming from for him in his life. It was something that he was already feeling prior to what's happening. Pahat pahati, there was a pahat. But the big shock is vayetayani. It actually happened. It came to him. So there is no question that the person has that the neshama of the person has the ability to be able to pick a lot of nuances in the world and in its own personal world, and be able to transmit them to the person, and the person actually sees and feels things that are happening. The neshama, as I said, with dreams is a different chapter, even though it's the same idea. Telepathy is also the same concept. People that connect, neshamot that connect, and two people are thinking the same way, and they're thinking the same thing at the same time. They're picking up the phone to call each other at the same time. It happens all the time, especially we use the phone so much that by the odds it has to happen. But even when people didn't use the phone 20 hours a day, it's still there is a certain transfer of thoughts between two people, where the neshamot may be connected, where the neshamot may actually be from the same source of a neshama. As we know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created 600,000 neshamot, and from there spread all the other neshamot, like a candle that you light millions of candles from one candle. So is the neshama ner Hashem nishmat Adam, the neshama is the ner Hashem, And from there, so obviously from the same candle, there is many neshamot that come about. So there is a connection. There's a connection to the original neshama, and therefore there is naturally a sequence of, of communication, in whichever form, that happens between the neshamot, and people do think people could end up, we understand clearly, for example, that twins will have it very naturally, that they'll think of each other, and they'll do the same thing at the same time, and even if they're in different parts of the world, and we accept that as a very normal thing, right? But it's the same idea. We're twins with a lot of people, and our neshamot are connected, and therefore there is a back and forth type of communication that is subconscious, that it just happens, it comes into your mind, and we think of the same thing at the same time. And there's no question that's part of this sixth sense that we speak about. The next expression of the neshama in the form of its reality is the effect that the neshama has on the person. So Shlomo HaMelech made it very clear that the state of the spirit of a person affects totally the physicality. Something that today the doctors understand better, that a person who is happy in life, who is satisfied in life, is less prone to sickness. A person who's sick will heal faster in the spirit, in a good physical, in a good psychological, positive spirit, will heal physically faster than somebody who's depressed. All this is Shlomo HaMelech said it in more pasukim mishleh. All this chokhmah that they found out. Ruach ish yechalkel ma'achalev. The spirit of man sustains his sickness. If the spirit is good, the person will heal. The ruach nechea, but downtrodden spirit, the spirit that is depressed, who can sustain a sickness with a depressed spirit? So there is no question that the state of the neshama has an effect, a real effect in the physicality of man, and it's felt in the physical expression. There is no question that person will feel different, will be less prone to weakness of the physical if the spiritual is strengthened. And that's what Shlomo HaMelech said, and it expands to limits that are beyond us. They're totally beyond us, where a person can actually transcend pain with a full positive charge of the neshama. Actually limit the amount of pain when going through a procedure, a painful procedure. It's so we don't understand it because we're pretty much living in a society that is very sensitive to pain. They don't allow us to feel pain. You go to a doctor, you have pain, they give you prescriptions to just put you out. You understand? And people love it. You understand? They want to be put out. It's who walks around with a headache? You have a headache? Take Advil. There's no such thing as any other type of consideration. We live pumping ourselves with all types of painkillers so that we're unable to sustain any pain. If a person would realize that the state of mind of a person can actually alleviate pain, and can actually, if somebody would know how to do it, can actually transcend themselves beyond the pain, beyond any threshold of pain, it's hard to. The Gemara tells us a story, a simple story, that Rabbi was sitting and studying Torah, and he was leaning on his hands, and in the way they used to sit on the ground, and he was leaning on his hand in a way that he was bleeding from his thumbs, and he hadn't felt anything. Until somebody came to challenge him and told him, well, this is the famous this, that they told him, what kind of people are you? That you said, Na'aseh Shema, you preceded your actions to your ears, you should have first heard what HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to offer and this. But the Gemara tells us that when he came, he saw Rabbi that was sitting and bleeding, and he wasn't aware. He wasn't aware that he had hurt himself, and he was bleeding, and he felt no pain. He had no recognition of that pain at all. And that was the way they learned Torah. Torah had the power to put the neshama of a person so much above the level of physicality where the person can actually not feel pain. They speak of one of the Admorim of a couple of generations ago that he actually went through surgery without anesthesia and felt no pain. So some of them was through their concentration on issues of Torah, where the neshama can elevate itself to such level where it does not feel the pain. One of them actually was composing a song to HaKadosh Baruch Hu during the surgery. And the focus on the happy song, the happy praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu was so powerful that it took him away from the physical pain. The neshama, a person can take the neshama and put it into such action that it has full control over the body, and the body becomes somewhat insignificant next to the neshama. There is no question that this can happen, because the neshama has a tremendous effect on the person. You have to learn to train yourself. You have to train yourself. So when when some of the Hasidim speak about mitzvah liot b'simcha, tamid, it's a mitzvah to be happy always, it means not only in happy occasions, right? It means in the difficult circumstances. In those circumstances where it's hard to be happy, the level of happiness, if a person can bring themselves to a level of happiness, to where the person is always happy, it will alleviate a lot of the pain that goes through these people. So you find some of these Hasidim dancing in the streets. We all have our opinion, but the fact is that maybe that the level of happiness does affect a life where a person with nothing and with the most difficult of circumstances can be totally happy. The neshama of a person will affect him and will affect his surroundings also. There is no question that happy people breed happiness around them. Sad people breed sadness around them. If you're stuck living with a sad person, you got problems. You got problems. Because Every coin has two sides. And every situation can be looked as a terrible situation, or at least not such a terrible situation. Not to say that you could even look good on the other side. But you have to live with a feeling of a positive expression to everything. If not only do you affect yourself, like we said, like Shlomo HaMelech says, that you will unfortunately bring about even sickness, the weakening of the body, but you certainly affect the people around you. You affect your family, you affect the society that you live in. And people will naturally find a way of rejection when they're next to you, because you're just not a happy person. And people don't like to be around unhappy people. People want to be around happy people. And it's a big effort because it actually affects them. Not because they're bad people, because it affects them. When you sit around people with a lot of negativity, you too become a negative person. You too start thinking along the ways that the people around you think. You have no choice. It becomes the norm. It becomes the norm. You catch yourself being into, part of the web that entangles you into emotions that are not necessarily the right emotions. So much so is the effect in society that is so powerful that the Chachamim tell us that in the generation of the Mabul, even the animals sinned the same sins as man. Even the animal was corrupt. And why? Because man, the neshama of man, sets a mode in the world. Animals don't have choices. Animals have instinct. They are who they are. And therefore, man can influence the life of animals to the level of changing their instincts and making them into men. We know that behaviorally it happens. We know it even happens the other way. Yeah, there have been studies of children that grew up in zoos or in Africa and some of this, that they got to have the traits and the power of the animals, that they could run faster than the fastest animal, nothing in comparison to any other human being. It's a reality. I mean, we've seen it. It's been proven. You understand? So the neshama of a person has a tremendous effect in the entire world. And whatever, the neshama is powerful. The neshama is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's no limit to what the neshama can reach. You have to understand that. There is no limits to the heights that the neshama can reach. And that is what man has to very much cherish and understand, that it works both ways. In the same way, a neshama that is living in negativity will bring around all the negative vibes in the world towards a person. And you see people that you'll say they don't have mazal, they don't have this, they're always in trouble, they're always this. A lot of it is brought upon themselves. A lot of it is part of the fact that they're unhappy in their lives, and their neshama is not satisfied, the neshama is not fulfilled, and therefore it affects everything. It affects everything. It affects their well-being. It affects their parnasah, believe it or not. It affects whether they're going to make a business deal or not make a business deal. It affects when the Chachamim speak so terribly about lashon hara, about ayin hara. This is what they're speaking about. These are negative traits of the neshama that destroy you. And besides the practical aspect that we all understand, lashon hara, for example, destroys the fabric of society. People always speaking badly about each other will destroy the society. The society will disintegrate. There will be a terrible lack of respect because you're constantly hearing people putting down other people. We understand that. But it's more than that. It's more than that. You actually hurt the person you speak about. You actually hurt yourself by speaking. There is a mode that you turn onto the neshama that is so negative that it affects everything else. And yes, believe it or not, yes, you sat down, you spoke Lashon Hara this morning, and then you went to your business, you believe that Lashon Hara did not affect you psychologically. Besides whether Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to respond to you in the way that you want it or not because of the sin, right? But even within yourself, even without Kadosh Baruch Hu's intervention in any way, you have already put yourself in the mode that your neshama has been affected in a way that it will affect everything else that you do. And therefore, there is that dimension, that sixth dimension to speaking of Lashon Hara that is so powerful, much more than many other averot, because it actually, you use the power of speech, which is the power of man, and the power of the neshama. The very power of the neshama is the speaking. That's what makes us different than the rest of the creations, and that's the ruach memalelah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put inside us, that spirit that speaks. So we use the highest, holiest expression of the neshama to speak Lashon Hara. That will affect everything that we do. And I'm saying it's not necessarily connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, I'm going to punish. That's not what it is. You are already creating a scenario in your day and in your very being that things look negative, things look bad. And you have no choice. You have no choice because you get used to it. And this is what it affects. So the person that will be very careful with speaking only positive things, the person that will only think positively about his fellow man, will have a different approach to it. They will be able to see when things don't look right, they will have a different vantage point, or a different vantage vision, or point of vision in an issue. They see things differently because they don't look. They're not blinded by the screen, by this screen that we have in front of us that is made up of negativity that we generate inside us and allow it to fester inside us beyond what we can. So people should understand that the Hakamim didn't just speak. The Hakamim picked these averot because they actually bring about an expression of in the neshama that is negative in everything that the person will do. And yes, we can affect the animal world. We can affect the vegetable world. We can affect the vegetable world. A plant in your house will look different, believe it or not, in the way that you neshama feels. It will affect that plant in your house. And, you'll walk into somebody's house, look at the plants, and you'll know what type of a house it is. And it sounds like a joke. It sounds but it's real. It's real. We have a total effect in every creation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put in the world. It's affected by the Koach of Hashem. That's the only way it goes. It doesn't go any other way. And nobody can save himself. Nobody can save himself. It's a reality. It's not a fantasy. It's not sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. It's as much of a reality as if a person takes a knife to his finger. It cuts. It cuts. There's no one that took a knife to his finger and he cut. It happens. It's normal. It's what happens to everybody. The same thing is with the koach of the neshama that we have. That we have to understand that we affect every creation in the world with the spirit that we have. And then we are powerful. One side is that. On the other side, when the neshama is strong, when the spirit of a person is strong, when the person is solid in the way in the positive of life, then it affects everything. It affects everything around the person. It affects, like Shlomo Melech said, his physicality. It affects everything else. Psychiatrists that have done some type of these group works and so on, they will tell you that if we sit in a room and we all focus on wanting the same thing, the chances of happening are much greater by the power of our minds. So if I wanted to, and they tried it, to flip a coin, and we all decided that we want that the coin should be heads up, the power of our mind will make it at a much higher ratio for the coin to turn up, heads up. We have the power, the collective power that we have that affects the very physical world in such a way. Yeah, so we think about these magic guys who can take with their minds and twist the folds and these type of games. You understand? But that's good for that's good for television, yeah, or whatever. But in real life, it happens to a different to a level. Not everybody can twist metal utensils, but that we can have an effect in everything around us, even in the physicality of something. There is no question that it may not be to that degree. Those few people that can actually, if it's not achizat enayim, if it's not magic, right? If it's real, that they can do, with their minds, they can bend things and so on. Yeah, it's a long extension of what we can all do. We can all twist physicality, yeah, and not in such a splashy way, and not, but certainly we shape even the physicality around us. There is no question that everything will be affected, and we see it. We see it where the children that are born. Yeah, if you were to move to China, in 2-3 generations, your children will look Chinese with all the genes that you have. Because sight is one of the kohot of the neshama. The fact that I'm seeing this constantly, and that was the trick of Yaakov Avinu, with Laban, to create in front of the animals something visual that will affect the neshama. And by consequence, it will actually affect the physicality of the animals. And they were born with spots because Yaakov Avinu put the stick that in front of their eyes. And at the time of conception, they were looking at this, and that's what they reproduced. It was not a magic trick. It's normal. This is normal. This is what happens. This is what happens. The koach of the neshama has an effect in the very shape, in the color, in everything that in this new human being that you create. And new genes will come out that are not inside you, that are simply the strength of vision, the strength of the neshama. Not because you have those genes. It's the neshama that is able to capture, yeah, the shape and the color and everything that is in front of you. And you will become. So, you live in countries where people are dark, you will be darker. It's not natural, and it's not because you sit in the sun. If you hide from the sun also, you'll also feel the same way. It's not related to the physical, exercise that you go through. That's not what it is. It's the fact that your neshama, the vision, is one of the kohot of the neshama, and therefore vision affects us. And the same way, like the people that are looking at us are affected by our neshama, are affected by our neshama. Sometimes you sit around people and you feel soothing. You feel soothing. Like immediately you pick up good vibes from it. You feel good. You sit at times next to an older person, next to a Talmid Chacham, to this, and you feel. And other times you sit next to other people and you feel your blood rushing. There is, and without any interaction, without even knowing who the person is. At times you catch yourself saying, why am I feeling so negative about this person? I don't even know who they are. Maybe it's a tzaddik. Somehow, we send vibes. Call it the aura, it's the neshama. Our neshama is talking, is communicating with the world and affecting them. affecting the world. So when you sit next to me, there is no question that my vibes are going towards you. And if they're good, you're going to feel good. And if they're not good, you're going to feel they're not good. We are totally sensitive to what goes on. We may not pay attention. We may not subconsciously sit for a moment and say, okay, what did I feel now? You understand? Maybe we should. Maybe that's the way that we should gauge people, right? But okay, that's not our business. We have a better business to judge everybody that comes good and everybody's good. And even when I get that bad vibes, it must be a bad day, an off day. Right? This is what we're supposed to do. But it doesn't change the reality. You're having an off day, you're a wonderful person, but you're having an off day, it's going to affect you. It's going to affect me by the way you say good morning, by the way you sit, by the physical expression of your body, just the motions of your body. Everything is the neshama that is in action. The neshama is constantly acting. When I'm moving, when I'm putting myself in any position, that it's the neshama that is pushing me to where I am and to that expression. And therefore, you've just found out what my neshama feels. If you care, so the tzaddikim are well trained. They know they can pick up these vibes and they will tell you what you're thinking, what you're feeling, they have a clear vision of everything. We have a lot of screens in front of us that disturb us, and we don't have such a clear vision. But there is no question that if a person were to put the effort into thinking about everything that the person feels, you see the neshama in total action. You see them in your neshama. You learn about yourself. You learn about everybody around you, and especially those that are close to you. That you really you're able to analyze exactly what's going inside them to the point that there is no need even for verbal communication. A person who is attuned to this will be able to pick up what's going on with the people around him by their vibes that they're sending without even having to sit down. And then, and you will do it at times. You will go and you will say you're having a bad day even though the person didn't tell you that he or she is having a bad day. Or whatever so sometimes it's more obvious than other times. Most of the times it's not obvious. And the person who's sensitive and allows the neshama to connect will immediately feel the senses that are coming from the other neshama. So this communication of neshamot is much more real than anything that we're sitting in this room, and if you would be able to see the neshamot communicating with each other here, it would be mind-boggling. It would be mind-boggling because it's only the subconscious. We couldn't explain it. We couldn't even say that we saw it. But every look, every motion, it affects the entire world. And therefore, there is a reality that we don't live. That only through Torah, only through mitzvot, whereas the neshama is energized, where the neshama is given its full power, and the more, the better, then that's why the tzaddikim can see things, and you think, wow, it's not wow, you can do it also. We all have the same neshama, more or less, the power that we have. Sure, there's differences in neshamot, but the power of the neshama is there. We all have a neshama. That means we all have a power. They've mastered it to the point where it's real, and to them like there's never a doubt of what they're seeing. We would be very skeptical, even when we see things. We're skeptical. Is it possible that this is what I'm seeing? Am I feeling the right thing? Am I not feeling the right thing? But the more there's Torah in a person, the more the clarity is there, the more the energy to the neshama is there. The neshama is plugged into a generator of energy. That's what Torah is. And therefore, the person will have a different vision of the entire world, a different understanding of everybody around him, of every circumstance around him, and see a whole different picture than what most people see. The same picture, but the realities are totally different because of that clarity that comes through a pure neshama. The more the purification takes place, the clearer. It's very simple. You have to purify. By consequence, you have it clear. You have taken away all the impurities. So the vision is much more clear. you've cleaned the glass, right? The glass is dirty, with our perceptions. You understand? A clear neshama would be looking through a clear glass and seeing things that other people will totally miss.